This was the worst scene I've ever been to. Before you even went into the residence, you could smell the decomposition.
At a quiet suburban home in Waukesha, Wisconsin, investigators walk into a scene that is straight out of a horror movie.
At the time that I got there, we knew that there were 2 bodies found.
Right away, we were asking questions. Where is their kid? Are they going to find the body? They found 2 and maybe there's a 3rd.
As terrifying as this situation is, this case becomes something so much bigger and darker.
Once you're behind the curtain, it's very difficult to know what's going on.
Just after 8 p.m. on February 28, 2025, investigators walked into a house in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and immediately knew something was wrong. The smell reached them before they even crossed the threshold. 2 bodies, a missing teenager,
every clue
and a question no one could answer yet. Where was the boy who lived there? The house sat in a quiet, affluent suburb west of Milwaukee, the kind of place where double homicides simply did not happen.
Now, this is all happening on a peaceful winter's day in a place where murders, and especially double murders, are very rare.
Waukesha is a very safe place. It's kind of an affluent part of the state.
It's a very typical Midwest city. It's really open. People are super friendly. Just the most typical small-town American setting.
Investigators would later describe Waukesha as an unusually safe, typical Midwestern community. That description made what they found inside even harder to reconcile. The case began not with a body, but with an absence. 17-year-old Nikita Cassap's grandmother called authorities because she hadn't heard from him and he'd stopped attending school. Around the same time, the Waukesha School District filed a separate report flagging his unexplained absence. His grandmother also mentioned something odd. His stepfather, Donald Mayer, had been texting her, saying he was sick, sounding strange.
The start of this was really that there was a call that came in, and so that started the real what happened situation for us.
The call comes from 17-year-old Nikita Cassap's grandma. She's concerned about him, she's worried, she doesn't know where he is.
When Nikita's grandma reported that he wasn't attending school and that he was missing, we also received a report from the Waukesha School District on the same time. And so that's when we started kind of looking into what was going on.
Nikita's grandma also tells police that she has this strange feeling about her son, Donald Mayer. This is Nikita's stepdad. Apparently, he wasn't feeling well.
When deputies entered the home, they found Donald Mayer's wife, Tatiana, who had been shot multiple times and covered with blankets and towels. In a small office near the front of the house, they found Donald Mayer also covered, also deceased, with a severe head wound. Investigators noted unlit candles near his body that appeared to have been burned at some point before.
My first involvement was February 28th, 2025. Waukesha County Sheriff's Department called me and told me a little bit about the facts, and from there I headed out to the scene.
This was the worst scene I've ever been to. Before you even went into the residence, you could smell the decomposition.
Once investigators go inside, they find a house of horrors.
Tatiana was shot multiple times.
She had been covered up by numerous blankets and towels. Towards the front of the residence, there was a small office area, and that's where Donald was. And again, he was also covered with blankets and towels.
It appeared that he might have been at his desk or doing some type of work there.
There were candles in the area of Donald Mayer's body. They were not lit when I got there. They were extinguished, but it did appear that they had been lit in the past.
The scene initially looked like a burglary. Framed pictures had been pulled off walls. Beds were overturned. Closets had been emptied onto the floor. Paperwork for a handgun was found, but no handgun was in the house.
Once we were able to remove some of the blankets and clothing from Don, you could see that there was a head wound, a very massive head wound.
I noted that there were a lot of piles of clothing, blankets, in addition to where the two deceased individuals were. And my concern was, is the 17-year-old son somewhere under those blankets or clothing, or was the family dog deceased also hidden?
Right away, we were asking questions. Where is their kid? What's happening? And we're all thinking, has the kid been kidnapped? Has he run away? Are they going to find the body? Is the body just in the home and they found two and maybe there's a third?
When they first entered, they thought that this was possibly a burglary. Pictures were off the walls, beds were off the box spring. If you had gone into the closets, all the clothing was off any shelving units. It was laying all over the floor. It definitely looked like someone had gone there and burglarized the residence.
There's also another small study area upstairs where paperwork was pulled out. We did find paperwork for a handgun, but we didn't locate a handgun in the house. So was it something where a suspect located a handgun and then used it on the family? As the night progressed, we determined there was no other victims in the house.
For the first several hours, investigators didn't know if they were looking for a missing child, a kidnapping victim, or a suspect. Nikita wasn't in the house. Neither was the family dog. Neither was one of the family's vehicles. Records established a timeline that quietly answered part of the question. February 11th, 2025 was the last day Nikita physically attended school, and the same date both Donald and Tatiana's vehicles were last recorded on neighborhood surveillance leaving and returning to the property. After that date, Donald had continued texting his employer and Nikita's school, claiming illness. The excuses were inconsistent. He cited conjunctivitis in one message and a sore throat in another. Complaints that investigators noted did not naturally align with one another.
We had gotten a couple different well-being checks, and we had learned that, Nikita hadn't been at school, Don hadn't been at work. Nikita had previously been, perfect attendance at school, and now he's a no-show.
The last date that he was physically at school was the 11th. I believe that a couple of his teachers reached out to him and he had a response that he was sick. They indicated that he should have one of his parents call the school, and no one ever did.
When was Don last seen? When was he last at work? Did his work have contact with him?
Donald really worked from home. I think he went in very rarely into his office. As his boss was reaching out to his employee, there were responses back on text messages or emails indicating, I'm sick. When his boss wanted to talk to him, I believe he started responding that he doesn't have a voice and therefore he can't talk.
So he was texting into work since the 11th. And the text didn't always make sense. He would make poor excuses like saying he had conjunctivitis, and then make comments that his throat was sore. And so the symptoms wouldn't always line up with diagnoses.
We also received information from the neighbor's Ring camera, which was able to determine, kind of narrow down the time of death, because we saw when Donald and Tatiana's cars were last seen leaving and coming back to the residence.
Someone, it seemed, was impersonating Donald Mayer and doing it clumsily. Cell phone data gave investigators their next real break. Emergency pings on Nikita's phone traced a route south through Illinois, then west through Iowa, Colorado, and Wyoming, before reaching Kansas.
We knew that there was a vehicle missing from the residence. It just kept piling on that something's going on here. Something's wrong.
Investigators need to find Nikita. The last time anyone heard from him was February 11th. Now it's the 28th. That's more than 2 weeks later.
And we started kind of figuring out that night that we believed that Nikita had taken down Mayer's vehicle, that he had left with that vehicle. We started pinging, doing emergency pings on Nikita's phone, and we did get some emergency ping information back from Waukesha. We had a ping or a location going south in Illinois. We then had him going west through Iowa, Colorado, Wyoming, I believe down to Kansas.
Along the way, the trail included a stop at the world's largest truck stop in Iowa on February 24th, an unexplained detour for a 17-year-old with no driver's license driving across the country alone.
Interesting choice.
The truck stop that Nikita stopped at was on February 24th. It almost was like he was sightseeing.
He's 17 years old and he doesn't have a driver's license. So he's driving across the country without a driver's license.
And then he ended up in Kansas.
What ended up getting him caught was his driving. He didn't stop all the way at a stop sign. Literally, that was the reason for the traffic stop, as he rolled a stop sign.
They run the plate. Coincidentally, the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department had just put that license plate in the system as car was believed to be stolen, and therefore the timing was great. I mean, if he had done that the day before, I'm sure he would have gotten a ticket and he would have been on his way.
It was definitely a break in our investigation that we didn't expect. Based on the circumstances and how it was a random stop that got...
His capture came down to something almost mundane. In Kansas, Nikita rolled through a stop sign. The resulting traffic stop happened to coincide with the vehicle's license plate. Having just been entered into the system as stolen, a piece of timing investigators would later call fortunate rather than the product of any broader manhunt. What deputies found when they searched the car deepened the mystery rather than resolving it. Inside were a .357 handgun, clothing that carried the odor of decomposition, a Bible, cash, jewelry, electronics, family photo albums, and birth certificates belonging to Nikita and his mother. The family dog was with him, unharmed.
Search Nikita Cassap's car, and what they find is both shocking and confusing.
There were some things that were found in the car when Nikita was stopped, including a .357 handgun. On top of that, there were clothing that smelled of the odor of decomposition. There was a Bible.
There was cash found throughout the vehicle, jewelry, electronics. There were photo albums, which I thought was very interesting, containing pictures of he and his family. We also found birth certificates for Nikita and his mom.
There was some cameras, so I don't know if he thought that the cameras that he had taken had evidence on them. Older laptops, electronics, cell phones. It's just very eclectic stuff that he had with him.
He did take the dog with him on his road trips. I believe that the dog was the only thing left that was kind of someone who could comfort him or someone who was known to him.
Maybe he didn't want to be alone, and he probably didn't want to leave the dog there alone. I was very glad that the dog was still alive.
On a camera recovered from the vehicle, investigators found a memory card containing images of his mother and stepfather's bodies, arranged with candles and blankets in a manner that struck investigators as deliberate rather than incidental. A separate recovered video captured Nikita's voice referring to his stepfather's decomposing body, while apparently still inside the house with it.
In one of the cameras, investigators find this memory card that contains some truly disturbing images.
There was his mother and his stepfather's bodies in kind of odd arrangements of candles and how they were wrapped in blankets. It appeared that, based on the pictures, that there was some sort of fascination with their death, and that it was found to be extremely concerning behavior. I believe the reason for the candles and the blankets, there may have been some ritualistic element to it. On top of that, there was a video that was recovered in which Nikita can be heard on the phone talking about his stepfather's body, saying you can see his rotten body right there. So as he's in the house with his stepfather, he's making comments about how his body is decomposing.
The timeline that followed was, by investigators' own account, difficult to process. Nikita Cassap had allegedly killed both his mother and stepfather on or around February 11th, then continued living in the house with their bodies for more than 2 weeks. He largely stayed in the basement, avoiding the main level where they remained.
It's unbelievable to say, but it seems that Nikita Cassap was living in this house with his parents' decomposing bodies for more than 2 weeks.
I believe that he was mostly staying in the basement of the house. It looked like there's like a TV room kind of thing where he had a couch and blankets, and I think he was trying to avoid being on that main level where both his mom and Donald were.
During that period, he went grocery shopping, ordered fast food, walked the dog, took out the trash, and shoveled the driveway, all while continuing to text the school and Donald's employer under his stepfather's name. Investigators determined that Donald was killed first, shot in the back of the head, and that Tatiana was killed upon returning home, still wearing her coat, shot in the throat.
As police piece together what exactly happened during these last 2.5 weeks, all signs are now pointing to Nikita as the perpetrator of these murders.
I believe he murdered Dawn first, and then he waited for Tatiana to come home. I mean, she was still wearing her winter coat. She just had gotten in the door. I think it was pretty apparent that he had a plan, and he enacted his plan to murder his parents.
He truly executed his parents. He ambushed them, he shot Dawn in the back of the head, and he shot his mom, I believe, at one point through her throat. He leaves her where she falls, and he leaves Donald where he falls, and then just covers them up with some blankets and lives with them. And what's even freakier to me is that he's calling himself into school. He is pretending to be Donald to his work. He's pretending to be Donald to his mom, who is his grandma. He's covering his tracks, and he's acting normal.
Nikita went grocery shopping. He went and bought fast food. He went to Culver's. He walked the dog. He took out the trash. He shoveled the driveway. He did all the kind of normal things that someone would do while living, but with his dead parents in the house.
It wasn't that he just killed them and ran. He killed them and lived with them.
Both bodies were left where they fell and later covered. The initial impression of a burglary appears, based on investigators' assessment, to have actually reflected a search for cash, for jewelry, for anything hidden behind wall photographs, conducted repeatedly over the 2 weeks he remained in the house.
What's even more concerning is that what started with police thinking this was a burglar looking for loot actually seems to be Nikita working out a plan.
We saw some money envelopes on the counter. So I think he knew that they kept cash around, and I think that's why he was looking through the house. I think he may have also been looking for valuables, including jewelry, and thought, I mean, a lot of people have safes behind their, large pictures. So we thought maybe that is why he took the pictures off the wall to see if there was anything behind it, possibly if anything was taped behind the pictures.
That's what he was doing every day. He spent 2 weeks searching that house, tearing apart that house. He went through everything.
The stated motive, when it emerged, went well beyond a domestic killing. According to investigators, Nikita's plan extended to an attempt to destabilize the U.S. government, including an intention to assassinate the president and vice president.
Look, as awful as it is to say, Nikita wouldn't be the first person to kill his parents. But detectives are about to learn that he has a plan that is destructive on a whole other level.
He actually wanted to destabilize our government was his ultimate plan, and to assassinate the president and the vice president.
I think he believed that plan was in the stages that it was ready for him to leave and ready to start trying to take action to make this plan happen.
He needed a vehicle, he needed money, he needed to get away from them. If he stayed, there's no way that he'd be able to do what he was planning on doing.
I ended up being sent down there on March 10th to pick up Nikita in Kansas. That's when I first had contact with Nikita.
So since Nikita's arrest a couple weeks ago, he's been held at this juvenile security facility for evaluation.
On the flight back, Nikita's demeanor was kind of bizarre for the circumstances. He didn't show any kind of emotion or concern. He just appeared to be there. He was calm, he was quiet, he would occasionally make just shallow jokes or engage in just small talk, but nothing that you would expect from someone who, knew that his life was changing significantly and he was now going back to Wisconsin to deal with these consequences of his actions.
He believed he needed a vehicle, money, and freedom from his parents to move that plan forward, which investigators say factored directly into the timing of the killings. Nikita was flown back to Wisconsin from Kansas on March 10th. In a recorded interview, he answered basic biographical questions calmly. Born in Moldova in 2007, arriving in the United States in 2017 after his mother married Donald Mayer. He described a strong academic record, ranking third in his class, planning to study a STEM field at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and involvement in extracurriculars including a cybersecurity-focused business club. Investigators who interacted with him described his demeanor as notably calm and largely without visible emotion, a contrast one detective said was difficult to reconcile with the crimes under discussion.
He seemed nice, he seemed polite, and he seemed typical. That's what was interesting. I mean, if you ran into Nikita, you would not say, oh, this is somebody I should be afraid of. It was the calmness.
A classmate, identified in records as Witness A, told investigators that Nikita had described a positive relationship with his parents and a happy upbringing, even as he'd shared an escalating interest in extremist content, including material referred to as gore edits, combat footage layered with music.
And the key to figuring this all out is a classmate of Cassap's who decides to speak to police. Now, something to note, this person is referred to as Witness A to protect their identity.
Witness A was someone who had come into the investigation because Nikita had some sort of communication with her prior to killing his parents. That he might kill himself, and then in order to, not make his parents go through that, he would kill his parents first.
When she would kind of confront him on that, he'd back off saying, well, I don't have a gun. I would never actually do it. And they asked her, how did he describe his upbringing? How did he describe his life, his house, his relationship with his mom and his stepdad? And he was very positive about it. Thought he had a wonderful childhood, believed that he had a good family, which again makes this even more shocking.
A lot of his social time was online, and it caused kind of this interest in having some odd political views or concerning political views.
Looking up school shootings, looking up mass murders, looking up killers. There's a weird fascination that he really had with really dark, scary things.
He had also shared what she described as gore edits to her. And when asked what a gore edit was, Witness A explained that gore edits were like videos and clips from war that were overlaid with Russian music. Witness A
Investigators say he had also mentioned to her, prior to the killings, a stated intention to kill himself and, in order to spare his parents that grief, kill them first. When she pressed him on it, he reportedly backed away from the statement. A forensic review of Nikita's devices found activity on the messaging app Telegram, where investigators say he had sought out contact with extremist networks. The FBI was brought in, and records show the Bureau had actually investigated Nikita once before, in 2023, after his mother raised concerns about his online activity. That earlier investigation was closed without charges.
That's when police call in the FBI. Turns out, though, this isn't new. The FBI had actually investigated Nikita Cassap 2 years earlier.
Back in 2023, Nikita's mom actually called the Bureau, and the FBI showed up to do an investigation, decided that it was nothing of consequence and moved on. But there was that concern of his being online, being in contact with some of these more extremist organizations.
At the time, there wasn't enough to charge Nikita Cassap with anything. This time, very different when agents discover the extent of his plot.
He truly believed he was going to murder the president.
This time, agents found a documented plan involving a drone-based attack intended to kill the president, followed by an intention to flee to Ukraine and remain there for an extended period. Investigators noted that the cash, jewelry, and family documents found in his car were consistent with preparations for that departure. Nikita was charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, along with hiding a corpse and theft. In December 2025, he pleaded guilty to both homicide counts. Court video shows a visibly shaking response as he entered his plea. Prosecutors agreed to dismiss the remaining counts in exchange, a decision the district attorney's office said reflected the family's wish to avoid a trial. At sentencing, family members of Donald and Tatiana addressed the court, describing the loss as the destruction of 2 lives and everything connected to them. Nikita's defense argued for the possibility of parole eligibility after 20 years, citing his age and cooperation with the FBI after his arrest. Prosecutors argued for life without any possibility of release, stating plainly that the plan to kill his parents originated with him, not the internet content he consumed. Before sentencing, Nikita addressed the court directly, apologizing to both families and describing his mother in personal terms, then stated that he had become consumed by extremist ideas and believed, at the time, that his actions were part of a larger conflict.
Before the judge officially sentences
Nikita Cassap to 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of extended supervision, citing the planned nature of the killings and the acts that followed them. What remains genuinely unresolved is the deeper question investigators themselves acknowledge they may never fully answer: how a teenager described by those who knew him as intelligent, high-achieving, and by his own account loved by his family, arrived at a plan involving not just his parents' deaths, but an attempt on the president's life. The court reached a verdict. The full explanation for how he got there did not,